Every single job can be stressful when things go wrong, but especially in piling. You're dealing with very expensive projects. You're the first trade that shows onto the job site. Without you, all the other trades, they can't start unless you build the foundation. Piling rigs, they're already expensive before, but since COVID, the price went up even more and at a more rapid pace. There used to be about 125 companies across Australia that used to be involved in the drilling game. Now we're looking at about probably 300 or even more. You gotta make sure that you work with a reliable supplier, especially with a dealer that has on hand spare parts available. If you have a project that has been delayed, if your machine is playing up as well, that's just gonna add on to the problem. It's gonna make things more difficult. That's why it's so important to work with a reputable supplier that has a lot of experience. I'm Mike DeBroda, and this is TerraQUIP Talk. After years of providing drilling equipment solutions, I know that a project success hinges on reliable, high-quality rigs that meet your needs. So if you're ready to make smarter equipment decisions and build stronger foundations, let's get started. Hi guys, thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to be talking today about 10 brutal truths about our beautiful drilling and piling industry. And I'm happy to share with you points that I've learned over the last 15 years in this industry. Brutal truth number one, everything is very costly. Piling rigs are extremely expensive machines and they become more and more expensive over the last few years. And with the cost of pretty much everything going up, they're already expensive before, but I feel like since COVID, the price went up even more and at a more rapid pace. So just to give you an example, back in 2018, we started selling the first piling rig, the first A140, which is a 40-ton class piling rig, for 625,000 Australian dollars. Now, almost 7 years later, it's about 40% increase in that. So it's true that at that time, we're trying to penetrate the market and that price didn't really reflect the correct price at that time. But still, I would say I would have been probably about 7% under the real price back in those times. Now, yeah, we're looking at about, as I said, 40% increase. And that's across all the manufacturers, not just us, of course. And that's true also for other accessories that we use in our industry, for tools, for people, the cost of pretty much everything. Another thing that you need to take in consideration when it comes to the financial part of it is the cost of maintenance. So the daily maintenance of the machines and the equipment that you're using, as well as the cleaning, and of course the regular maintenance, which comes every 250 hours on a drilling rig, same as with any other heavy construction machinery. Now, even though it's expensive, it's well worth it in order to achieve the successful project, finishing and completing your project in time and in a safe way. So expensive is good because it ensures quality of the equipment, of the machinery, and as well as the labor force that you employ on your job sites. Going for cheaper, especially in this industry, is not the greatest idea. I actually have quite a few stories of people, they try to cut corners when it comes to quality and trying to save money. But in the end, it proved to be a false economy, which didn't turn out great for their companies because they went bankrupt and they moved on to something else, unfortunately. So just to think about it, to put things into perspective, for the sake of saving a few tens of thousands of dollars or a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars, it could actually save you millions in the future. So there's an English saying, pennies wise, pounds foolish. So I think that sums it all up. Now, the next real truth we're going to talk about our industry is competition. Although the piling industry is a very niche industry, it's definitely getting bigger and bigger. And what we've noticed over the last few years, especially over the last 15 years since I started, it definitely grew exponentially. Just to give you an example, there used to be about 125 companies across Australia that used to be involved in the drilling game back in 2011 when I started in this industry. Now we're looking at about probably 300 or even more companies, contracted companies performing drilling and piling across our nation. What I'm trying to say with this, it's really tough. There's a lot of, there's a lot of money in piling. It can be really rewarding, but you have to be good and you have to know what you're doing. You have to be organized. You have to be prepared. I remember someone in Melbourne saying a few years ago, even back then, even a few years ago, they used to complain that the industry is just so much more difficult nowadays. Whereas before, when he started back in 1991, he said, I used to send out the invoices and feel so bad about how much I charged. So that gives you a pretty good idea, how good it used to be. It's still good, but again, you need to be extremely organized. You need to have a lot of experience. You need to know what you're doing, and you need to use extremely good quality equipment, like I mentioned in point number one. Just to give you an idea, I think what's been happening lately in the last few years, and is going to continue to happen over the next few years, is the companies that are in this industry and in this sector, and they're, let's say, a specific piling or drilling contractor, they'll need to become more specialized. They need to offer better quality. They need to become more efficient, because we're noticing and I've noticed since pretty much 2013, 14, a lot of the civil contractors, they do civil construction, trucking, excavation, basically now want to offer the whole basement package, as they call it. So they want to do their own piling as well. So when that happens, obviously they'll want to drill their own piles when it's a simpler project. But then when things become more complicated, they're gonna go to a specialized drilling contractor, and this is where the specialized people that just do piling, and that's their bread and butter, and that's their focus, they'll need to become really good. They need to be looking at different technologies to add to their portfolio. So instead of doing, for example, just bore pile or CFA, they'll be needing to come with sheet pile, vibro flotation, or soil improvement technologies, such as soil mixing. So that's why when looking at a competition, this is what we mean in terms of what do you bring to the table. What can you still bring in order to still be relevant in the game and still ensure that you have a successful company. So in essence, what I'm saying is some projects are extremely easy to drill. So some company that has never done piling before, all they have to do is purchase a piling rig, which yes is expensive, but if they have the finance capability, they'll just purchase it. They'll hire someone that knows what they're doing, and they'll drill their own piles. But if the project is complicated, and we do have a lot of drilling and piling projects that are extremely complicated, extremely hard soil conditions in Australia, then they'll need to rely on specialized drilling contractors to complete that project. The third brutal truth, it's a very stressful industry. And of course, every single industry and every single job can be stressful when things go wrong, but especially in our industry, in piling, because you're dealing with very expensive projects, you're dealing with very expensive materials, and with projects that cost a lot of money to complete. The main reason why I'm saying it's stressful, and this job can be, this industry can put people under a lot of pressure, is because we're usually the first trade that goes into a project, commencing the project. And without us, without our project, without our foundation being built, without the basement and the car park, for example, if there is a car park being completed, the other trades that come after to continue that project, they can't start. We're holding them down. Therefore, we're holding down the entire project. And when that happens, is you'll notice a lot of the builders, a lot of the developers, they'll put in the contract that they'll hit the piling, the drilling contractors with LDs, which means liquidated damages, which it's pretty much like a penalty fee they get applied every single day that they're being late when delivering that project. So yeah, you can imagine it's not easy, and until the project is finished, you can't really breathe. You can't relax. For example, for me, as a piling equipment supplier, in case the machines that we sell or we rent or that we provide, if they break down, the biggest stress is on us, because it trickles down, from the developer to the builder to the drilling contractor and then on to us to get that machine up and running as soon as possible. Because the client, our direct client, will have a crew of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people just sitting there waiting for that machine to be repaired and relying on that machine to complete their project and their job for that day, or for that week. So our job is extremely stressful as well, as business owners in providing the equipment. And for our technicians as well, you can imagine we put a lot of pressure on our guys to fix a rig in case there's a problem, and of course on our manufacturer back overseas to give us all the instructions necessary to get the machine up and running as soon as possible if something does happen. I've mentioned it so many times, and I've seen it across our industry so many times. people need good ways, good healthy ways to cope with the stress, and they need strategies to help them switch off when they're back at home, from work. And it's not easy to achieve that. I don't have the exact number or statistics of how many projects finish in time and how many they get delayed, but a lot of them do get delayed, and they even get delayed even before the piling starts, whether it's because of weather, because of council permits, or because of building permits, or because of lack of funds. The funds haven't been released. So I would say that probably most of the projects, they get delayed a little bit, but some, yeah, obviously get completed in time. I just don't have the exact statistic around that. So there's many reasons, of course, why a project can be delayed. Even the start of a project can be delayed. But of course, as a drilling contractor, you don't want your project to be delayed, to add on to the reasons why it can be delayed because of your equipment as well. So you got to make sure that you work with a reliable supplier, with a reliable manufacturer, and especially with a dealer that has on hand in Australia spare parts available, and not only the essentials, not only like oils and filters and things like that and consumables. They have to have minimum requirement. I'd say pretty much like 30% probably of the complete piling rig, they will need to have it there in terms of parts, whether that's seals, valves, distributors, engines, pumps, auxiliary pumps, you name it. Because if you have a project that has been delayed, if your machine is playing up as well, that's just going to add on to the problem. It's going to make things more difficult. That's why it's so important to work with a reputable supplier that has a lot of experience in the field. Brutal truth number 4. There's an unbelievably amount of hard work, guys. Drilling and piling people work extremely hard. Even for operators that just sitting in a machine, or whether they're people in the office, it's very normal that they pull 10, 12 hours a day, day in, day out. Not to mention the offsiders, which have a very physically intense job, pushing hoses out of the way, or shoveling things out of the way, or changing teeth on the drilling tools, or changing the actual drilling tool as well. But of course, people in the office, such as estimators, project managers, construction managers, they all have a really hard job in piling. It's an unbelievable amount of work, as I said. And of course, that some projects are more hard work than others. For example, CFA, where you need to synchronize concrete, cages, operator, delivery all at the same time in perfect synchronicity in order to complete your piles, because of the nature of that the CFA piles are being built. All of this translates into us as well when it comes to the hard work, because sometimes we have very tight schedules on delivering a certain machine. Sometimes we have to deliver a machine for weekend work, and we have to be on call for 24 hours, for the weekend shutdown, for example, on the rail, which works happen from Friday night at 12 p.m. at night until Monday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we need to be on call for the entire weekend to make sure that the machines are working well and there's no surprises, no negative surprises that could delay the project and, people commuting for work, for example, by train. So yes, there's an unbelievable amount of hard work. People have to, as I said, work really hard. But of course, there's the positive side as well, which is the fact that it's remunerating quite well. It's paid quite handsomely. Whether you're a job site person or an office person or a business owner, if you know what you're doing and you're doing it well, you're definitely going to be rewarded in a very good way. Just quickly, need reliable drilling equipment for your next project? At TerraQUIP Drilling Equipment, we offer tailored solutions with top-tier support to meet your project needs. Contact us using the links in the show notes to find the perfect equipment for your drilling project. Now back to the episode. Brutal truth number 5 now. Working in very hostile environments. People have to understand that this industry is incredibly hard, also because of the environment that we have to work in. So we're talking about concrete, mud, dust, very cold or hot days, depending on the region that you're working in. But across Australia, they can be very hostile environments. Imagine you've got a machine that goes full bore, at 40 degrees heats in the summer, with engines running in the background, noise, everything, Kelly bars banging on while discharging the material. It's not hard. It's not easy. It's incredibly hard, and the environment plays a role as well. Of course, there's some companies that have better cultures around this, and depending on the code that they abide, they will have they'll take off if it's over a certain temperature. I think it's over 32 or 35 degrees. They'll go home, for the day, and they'll start earlier the next day probably to. I know we've done that a few times where they were forecasting extreme heat. So our guys said, look, we got to go home. It's too hot. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. It's totally understandable, but we're going to start 5 o'clock tomorrow morning because it's an area that they don't care about noise, but we do care about the heat. So we're trying to avoid that. Not only the environment, of course, can be hostile. There's situations where the neighbors are not really happy about the new development that takes place, and they're not happy because, as I said, we're the first one that started the project. So we'll cop the most amount of heat, so to say, because neighbors will report us to council for being too noisy or for doing something unsafe or something they perceive to be unsafe. So the neighbors can be hostile as well, not only the environment. Now, brutal truth number 6. I feel like I've been so negative with this. Although it's the first episode, I'm being negative. That's not the point. I'm just trying to, I guess, paint a true picture of what's happening in our industry, and to make people aware, if they get into industry, what they should expect. So brochure number 6 is also it's something positive, and it's very rewarding. So as I said in previous points, although it's a lot of hard work, you work in different areas, hostile environments, it's stressful, all the negative things, it can be quite rewarding if you're experienced, if you do your job well, if you're reliable, and that goes for whether you're an employee or a contractor or a piling equipment supplier or a drilling contractor itself. If you do your job well and you're honest and people can trust you, once you build up on that career, you'll be highly rewarded in the future. I'm not talking only financially, but I'm also talking from, being a meaningful job. Because think about it, you're at the helm of building Australia from the ground up, as they say. You're building the foundations for roads, bridges, skyscrapers, hospitals, you name it, right? So in fact, some of our clients actually have some really interesting logos, and one of them has been, it actually says, building Australia from the ground up. And I think that's very meaningful. At least I find it very meaningful when we provide the equipment for a very iconic project, for example, somewhere near Opera House or somewhere in the middle of Sydney CBD, where, for example, we had our Marini MRP 350 low headroom remote drilling rig in a very, very tight space where no other rig could reach there and could build a pile. So our machine was on rental with a couple of contractors, and it did such an amazing job. And I was proud of it. I was telling everybody where it worked. I posted all over social media. It's as I said, it's something rewarding, not only from a financial perspective, but also in a meaningful way, because it makes you proud. And we take a lot of pride in what we do at TerraQUIP. Okay, brutal truth number 7, remunerating. The salaries in this industry are quite good, and in general, people working in this field will be rewarded in a financial way, as I said, especially if they're very specialized, because they're very specialized people working in a very niche industry. It's really hard to find good people, and as soon as you find them, you gotta reward them. I mean, I can give you the examples of, in my company, it took me years to build a good team of technicians, because they have such a hard life, and they have to be so skilled, they have to be smart, they have to be extremely careful, because we deal in an environment that's safety is our top priority. So they need to have all of this broad spectrum of abilities and qualities in order to do a good job. Once you find those people, you got to reward them. You got to look after them. You got to, not only in a financial way, but you got to give them meaning as well. And you got to keep them pretty much like a family. And this is something that I pride myself with, that our team, my colleagues, are not my employees, they're my family. That's just the way I see it. I'm sure a lot of you would want me to put some numbers into perspective, just to give you an idea. When I started back in 2011 in piling as a sales manager, I started on $60,000 a year. And then 6 or 7 years later, I pretty much got a raise. I got multiple raises that got me to about $180,000. That's a sales manager in the piling equipment sector. If you're a job site person, $90,000 per year, depending on how much experience you have. If you're an operator, you can even go up to $150,000 per year in some cases, or even more, depending on how much overtime you do. But yeah, numbers are looking quite positive, I would say, compared to any other industry that I've seen before. Okay, brutal truth number 8. Dangerous. It's a very dangerous environment. It's a very dangerous job, especially on the job site. Working with heavy equipment and heavy machinery in general is very dangerous, but working in drilling is even more, and the safety has to be absolute top priority, as I mentioned in the previous points. I mean, I know so many people that got injured. I know so many people that even died, unfortunately, in tragic accidents on job sites. So every single company needs to make safety a top priority. Moreover, you have these things, you know, on the job site, this piling rigs, which are these things that are tall, top heavy, lots of moving parts around them. There's so many things that could go wrong, and there's so many things that can be hazardous. They can be representing hazardous situations. A good example is when loading a machine onto a float, onto a platform. If you're someone that doesn't have experience in piling, it's the first time you're seeing that, I absolutely guarantee you're gonna be like, oh my God, what's he doing? He's gonna kill someone. Because until the machine reaches the tipping point, like it just, the crawlers go up the float, up the ramp, and then it needs to fall onto the float. But before it does that, it kind of like goes up in the air like that, and then slowly the tipping point goes onto the actual platform, and it just slowly falls and it settles. But until that happens, it's very tricky. And there's been many accidents. Even for experienced people, we're always, I guess, careful when we're doing that, and we're not taking things lightheartedly, because every single I guess minute can represent a difficult and a dangerous situation, and we need to make sure that we respect every single process, every single step that's been put in place by the manufacturer, by the job site people, by the contractor, and of course by the safety manager. I feel like in Australia we've achieved quite a good safety record, especially the last few years. Australia is an extremely good country when it comes to looking after its people and maintaining good, safe practices on the job site. One example of a drilling methodology that's called CFA, which stands for Continuous Flight Auger Technology, is particularly dangerous because we're working with concrete hoses up that travel up in the air and then go through the stem of the auger and then go down deep into the ground. And that concrete is under pressure, is being pumped by a very powerful pump. And sometimes they can be blockages, and that's what can hurt people. And I've seen a lot of accidents happen like this. One of the things that we do very well with IMT and Marini, which are very heavily focused on robustness, strength, and safety of the machine, is, first of all, we're being very conservative. So if we tell you, for example, of one of our piling rigs that we can do 20 meters deep in CFA, we actually can do a lot more than that. The machine is stable to do a lot more than that, but we'll be very conservative. And why? Because IMT, for example, as a company, as a manufacturer, long before I came into the picture, or before TerraQUIP came into the picture to represent them, in a different country, I think it was in Germany, they had a terrible, terrible accident where one of the machines actually tipped over and killed someone. And they had such a huge legal battle. It was a terrible, shocking accident. Since then, IMT became one of the top, safest machines, one of the most stable machines that's extremely conservative. I mean, I've got clients all the time telling me, like, this machine is so stable, like, we can put another 2 or 3 meters of mast up in the air, we can achieve 21, 22, 23 meters of CFA. And I was like, yes, you can, you're right, but then you're not, because we want to have a massive safety factor compared to other manufacturers. Of course, I'm not going to give names, but you look on their brochures and they claim all of this like fantastic capabilities, which of course, it's very easy to put on a catalog. I can put any number I want on a catalog, but does that reflect the reality? Does that take in consideration safety and the well-being of the people working with this equipment? That's the important thing. Okay, brutal truth number 9, and this is one of my favorite ones because of 2 reasons. One of them is a bit of a sad reason. Another one is a positive reason or a happy reason. And this is demanding on the family life and because of the working away. And working away is one of the main things that I myself that I have been affected by. I mean, think about it. Every single month you could be on a different project in a different area, in a different city or a different state. And that combined with a stressful lifestyle can be quite hard on your family time and on your personal life. So you gotta keep this in mind. It's extremely hard on the family time, and you have to be dealing, depending on the job that you're doing, of course, with a lot of working away. And of course, not every single company is the same, right? And every single company has different areas that they target, We also have smaller companies that work, for example, just in a certain area in Sydney, for example, in the eastern suburbs, And I know a particular company where the culture is actually extremely healthy. They encourage and they focus a lot on the family time. And by 2 p.m., 3 p.m., they're back at home, So it's actually quite good. So it's not all negative. It really depends the projects that you're on, the companies that you're working for, and of course, like the salaries that you're being remunerated with as well, because the harder it is, the better the pay. I feel that overall, I haven't been too positive in this podcast. I've been talking a lot about the positive and the negative, but of course I spoke about the positive as well. And the last brutal truth is AI, artificial intelligence, and how does it influence our industry? Although we haven't been influenced too much, the drilling and piling industry has been influenced in some aspects, in some segments. For example, in accounting, we've been able to implement some AI tools in media. So anything to do with like videos and galleries. I know a lot of the companies are using, for example, for social media, for posting, they're using a lot AI. I know they've been using it, for managing people or you name it. There could be different examples, right? But overall, AI doesn't really influence and will not be able to influence right now or in the near future too much, because there's so many elements in our industry, such as the surprise element, right? I mean, we're drilling, everything that happens in the ground, and there can be surprises there, right? You don't know what's in the ground. You don't know what problems you're going to have. And that's not only for the drilling and piling industry, it's for the construction industry in general. I feel like there's so many unpleasant surprises, that show up and can delay projects, and an AI tool will never be able to be capable enough, let's say, to adapt to all of that. Or if it will be, we will be one of the last ones to be affected. So I think that's a positive note. So because everything happens in the ground in our industry, and there can be many surprises, we actually have a funny saying in our industry: don't be surprised if something goes wrong, be surprised if everything goes well. All right, guys, I hope you found that useful. Those were 10 brutal truths about our industry, and I hope I haven't been too negative. I'm in this industry. I have been here for the last 15 years, and I can't see myself doing anything else. This is my passion. So it's an amazing industry to be in. I just wanted to lay some reality facts, I guess, down on the table for people that are considering potentially to get into this industry, or potentially people that are looking to get out of this industry. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning into TerraQUIP Talk. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support us is by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. You can also find out more from me on all social media platforms. The links are below. Until then, remember, if it's not turning, you're not earning.